everyone who made it out tonight, and hopefully we have a lot more viewers from home. We can understand that there are some things, the storm and Spurs. Go Spurs, go! If you are a Spurs fan, I know my husband's watching from home. We'll be watching from home. Welcome, new members. Do we have any new members here this evening? Raise your hand if you're a new member. Okay, we have two people in the back. They were here last time, but since then they've signed up as members. So it pays to visit. And then returning members, pretty much everyone else. Yes. Oh, okay.
They're not seeing the right slide at home.
Oh, okay.
They're seeing the first slide at home.
Okay. Yes? The pressure, I'm sorry, Derek. Can't see what's on the screen.
Try to go to the next slide that she wants to speak to. Okay, and what do you see now? Is it me? This is what you see.
Oh yeah, it looks like it's just one.
Now I see it. And now go to the next slide. Just give it a minute.
It's still too. It's just very slow.
Click it again.
That was on his screen before, but it was fine.
Yeah, maybe it's this little dialog box. That's
Maybe. That before when she was doing it.
It's okay.
So, do you have it on automatic?
No.
Oh. Yeah.
it's
just
just
very,
resolving
very
very slow. Yeah. I feel like we should just go to Elizabeth's talk and get that done.
Okay.
Should
Okay.
we
And
do
then
that?
we'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you okay making that announcement?
Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. So we're going to change things up here. Maybe we'll be able to forensics and figure out what's going on. But Elizabeth McGreevy, did I say that correct? Okay, is going to be presenting first, and then I will come back if there's some time and talk about some of the slides that were up, including the answers to the plants that were up there, the plants that were up there. But I wanted to say something about Elizabeth first. So Elizabeth is an ecologist, author, permaculture planner of the Tom Brown Jr. Tracker School and a sixth-generation Texan. With over 20 years of experience, her company, Land Steward, produces site-specific ecosystem management plans for hill country landowners. As the author of Wanted, Mountain Cedars, Dead and Alive, teaches that mountain cedar trees, limestone junipers, regenerate and sustain Texas karst country soils, groundwaters, and biodiversity. So let's welcome to the podium Elizabeth McGreevy. Thank you.
That was kind of an older bio. So I'm now working as I founded and I'm working as a director for Project Bedrock. We work with the Watershed Association that's out of Wimberley that is focused on Jacob's Well. I'm good. Am I good?
Sorry, I was asking someone over there if they can see it changing on Zoom.
So at Project Bedrock, we're working to incorporate the knowledge and everything about the mountain cedars. We're incorporating that into developing an online land management tool for landowners in the hill country. So it's exciting work. We're having fun.
It's the right screen. Yes. Is it advancing? Not yet.
Sorry, there we go.
Go ahead.
I see it.
Oh, okay, it's just a little bit delayed, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so I had to wait about a few seconds there before I can start talking. Okay. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. Okay, so mountain cedars are actually juniper trees. I get a lot of people saying, why mountain cedars? You know, they're junipers. Well, the word cedar is a common name applied to any conifer type trees that has cedral oil. So it has nothing to do with the Cedrus genus, it has to do with the cedral oil. So therefore your Cedrus, yours, and your Thuya arbovita that's used commonly in lumber, they all have a large amount of cedral oil. So they were calling them that based on the smell. And we have mostly ash junipers, which are Junipers ashii, but we also have lemon cedars, and that's Vada, and the two of them do hybridize. The picture on the bottom left, the champion mountain cedar that's a big guy. He's like 6'4", and the trunk there, about 4.5 feet up, is if I remember correctly, I think it's almost wide. Range from Mexico to Missouri. The map there, you can see the green, that's showing where the ash juniper is, and the hybrids. The yellow is where the lemon cedar is. As you can see, the one on the right there, that's around New Braunfels. If you've ever been to Mission Park in New Braunfels, you can see lemon cedars there. Now, the thing is that these are a type of juniper that have a preference for limestone and shallow soils. So if you look at the next map, it's going to overlay on the green. That is where limestone areas occur in Texas. And the biggest area is the Edwards Plateau. The hill country is the eastern part of the Edwards Plateau. So you can see that the mountain cedars pretty much follow the limestone. The Edwards Plateau is, and these other limestone areas are called karst terrain. You can call them karst landscape or karst country. I like to call them karst country. And the Edwards Plateau is one of the largest areas of karst country in the United States. Sorry, it takes a few seconds for I'm here to catch up with that. So just letting you know why I'm just hanging out here. Karst country exists all around the world. About 20% of land around the world is karst country. And they contain karst features such as holy rocks, cairns, springs, outcroppings, sinkholes, and artesian aquifers. And you can see the picture there. We got natural bridge caverns. And we have this lad who is going into a cave, who happens to be my son. And then the other thing up there, that's like the low canyon lake, these different strata. So limestone is a sedimentary rock, which means you're going to find lots of fossils. And then they come down in layers, and they formed underneath ancient oceans. Mountain cedars have been growing in Texas for more than 10,000 years, and that's as proven by fossilized pollen. That picture in the left was taken at Fresno Cave when it was first opened. That's in northwestern Bexar County, so not far from here. And the guy sitting next to a saber-toothed cat. And not far from there was some juniper pollen that was shown. Yeah, it was definitely growing around here 10,000 years ago. Burned rock of ash juniper were aged at 4 to 5,000 years old around Fort Hood. And Ferdinand Lindheimer, who knows Ferdinand Lindheimer? Everyone here should know him. He's the father of Texas botany, the first plant person here. He collected the first botanical sample in 1950 just west of New Braunfels. And that's his little specimen that he collected. Historically, mountain cedars were sought after resource. Now, just let that sink in. You know, it's like most people never even think of that. Just think of this bush that tears at our clothes and all that. But that picture there shows what they mostly looked like. And this is what people were writing about them. Excuse me. In 1847, West Comal County, this forest was a treasure to the colonists of New Braunfels. And in 1756, near Blanco, there's no commodities nor anything except good cedar and oak timber. I mean, they were referring to it as timber. And in 1830, West Travis County, cypress together with immense quantities of fine cedar might be readily floated down the stream. And here's some examples of how they were used. They were used for telegraph poles, telephone poles. The picture on the left there is a barn that was built in 1852. The top roof beam there is about 18 inches and over 30 feet long. And every single piece of wood there, that entire barn was made out of the mountain cedar. It's in perfect condition. Mission San Jose here in San Antonio. Now that is not the original Viga Latia ceiling, but that was a reproduction. Records that said that they were using the local mountain cedar. The picture on the upper that's in Canyon Lake, that is in the basement. It was a pure support beam of a house built in the 1850s. The bottom left there is near Llano when they were building the railroad. And in the middle there, you can see a pile of railroad ties, and those were all mountain cedar. So there's no Home Depot. So they had to just find the materials as they went along. And then, of course, then you got the fence posts. But today they're despised by many. Many get cedar fever. Many people just cut them down. And so you go from this respect for the tree to this, dislike of the tree so much. I'm just going to read these two quotes. There's some that are much worse, but this one is cedar as it exists in the Texas Hill Country deserves the reputation as the vile thriving in Texas. And then fuck the mountain cedar. It's not even a real tree. It's a shit, scrubby and squat and full of evil intent. And that's in your local San Antonio Current.
Oh, wow.
So what changed? Well, how in the world do we go affecting these trees to get rid of them? That's because 150 years ago, most of the mountain cedars were growing as trees with well-defined trunks. They were part of forests. And today, that little bush on the right, that's what we see today. So there was a big change. And so why don't we like them today? Problem number one, they keep invading our prairies. Ranchers have been battling them since the 1930s. We've been told also that the hill was historically mostly grass. And if it was mostly grass, we couldn't have had very many of these mountain cedars, right? And so people say, well, how did that happen? Well, people say, well, because it was burning all the time. There was fires, frequent fires. People say, oh, they burned every 3 to 5 years. And since they have volatile oils, it would make sense that they would have burned, right? And it's been assumed that the only place that they would have survived is inside, deep inside of protected canyons, alongside, big tooth maples and things like that. Problem number 2, we believe that they're water hogs. Older water studies and springs popping up after clearing mountain cedars convinced many landowners that this was true. Another study reported that mountain cedars were intercepting up to like 75% of the rain, 70 to 75%, which meant that every time it rained, that they would catch all in their canopy and then the rest would evaporate back into the air. While the sparse grass cover that they compared it to was only intercepting less than 20%. So therefore, a lot of the range scientists were saying, well, then we should just have sparse grass cover because there's too much interception. And number 3, they appear to cause erosion. Throughout the Texas Hill Country, it's common to see no grass growing between mountain cedars, often leading to soil erosion and more degradation. And number 4, nothing seems to eat them, since cattle don't eat them. We generally assume that nothing eats them and that wildlife don't even need them. So when I moved into the Hill Country over 25 years ago, I was told these things. I listened, I believed a little bit, but then I began to observe. Now, you have to understand, as I was introduced, I'm an ecologist, and part of our ecology is about watching and learning, reading the landscape, seeing what's happening, seeing how things come together. So I started asking, if fires were so frequent, to keep them all in the canyons, and they're so flammable, then why are there so many giant mountain cedars found outside of the canyon? Some people will say, because they only live to be 30 years old. Well, I'll disprove that in a little bit. If they use so much water, then how did research find more water flowing under them than the nearby grass? So here, what happened? Here, I'm going to go back. Wait. If you don't want to look at pictures, you can just watch me and I'll talk. Exited. Got it. I didn't touch anything. I swear.
No, you're fine. Something's going really weird with this tech today, and I don't know why.
It's a storm.
Probably.
It gets sparse, short vegetation to let the rain run off. Well, that doesn't make sense in a flash flood prone region. Okay, that went forward. If they cause erosion, like people think they see, then why do hills and mountain cedars erode less than hills covered with just grass? And if them, then why do so many wildlife rely on them for food, nesting, and shelter? So I'm going to go to the first little question I was asking. Once my slide cut, here we go. So the giant upland, I have been told this is one of the first things when I first started doing my research that people would, I had one guy say, why are you going to write a book about a tree that only lives 30 years? And I was like, what? I don't think they live just 30 years. Junipers in general are very long-lived species. There's several in California that have been aged to be 5,000 to 6,000 years old. I mean, they're long-lived species. They might invade into spread into a rangeland quickly, but it's a really long time to grow into a full tree. So if I'm finding all these giant ones, and every single picture I'm going to show here, these are all some of the biggest ones I've found. The first one on the left is estimated to be 300 to 500 years old. That's at the Shield Ranch. To the right, 350 to 550 years old. That's in the middle of a broad, open, kind of like a mid-plateau, outside Blanco. And also, wait, real quick, is that a lot of people will say that, the Native Americans, they were burning. Well, we do have stories of like that from the southern United States and from the West Coast, and maybe some in the Great Plains. but there actually is no evidence that there was regular burning in the hill country. That instead they tended to move, and there's no significant settlements. It was only around the bigger settlements, the more permanent settlements, that they were burning. They weren't just burning everywhere. They were burning strategically. They were very, very smart in how they used the fire. But there's no fire scar data to support the idea for constant fires around here. The way that you can determine it, now you can't figure out bushy cedar, but if you have the tree type that has the trunk, you measure about 4.5 feet up, and you determine how wide that trunk is in inches. You divide that by 0.1 and then 0.06. That gives you that range, because you can't get precise. That just gives you a kind of a range of ages. And here's, I'm going to show you another picture. This is the most remarkable. This is on a broad, open, dry, hot plateau above San Saba. I mean, that area is wide open. So my question is how in the world do trees that are supposed to be burning all the time, that are that flammable, or that fires were burning, how did they even establish an area like this? It begs the question is, were fires frequent? And they were not. There's no way that they could have been. Otherwise, other areas like the Western Edwards Plateau, that was historically more open. Definitely you would have had more fire there, but the terrain's more even. Around here, broken, uneven, and you get more moisture from the Gulf winds. So it makes it less likely to burn. And the next one here is, that's also at the Shield Ranch. That one's 300 to 500 years old. So here's 3 little quotes here. Early explorers who are describing the mountain cedars not growing in the says that we came to hills that were thickly covered with wild cedar. That was Rail County in 1766. The mountains are covered with cedar. That was Bandera County, 1828. Cedar-covered mountains rise about 5 miles north of Austin, and that's Travis County in 1848. And then one of the newspapers in about 1852 that the whole Balcones escarpment from Austin to New Braunfels is covered with all kinds of oaks and yopon and cactus, and then they said, and millions of cedars. So there's no way this was open grassland. Instead, it was a mix of vegetation that where maybe a fire would hit that area, and then here it was very patchy. And whenever you're reading all of the different quotes of people, that is the impression, that's the more accurate representation, description of the hill country, very patchy mosaic type of vegetation. Okay, so we talking about being a water hog, and here's the studies. Now, this is out Texas AgriLife, the Eco-Hydrology Lab, and where they're finding more water moving under mountain cedars than under the nearby grass. They're finding 3 times more rain is infiltrating underneath mountain cedars adjacent grass. Now, granted, the grasses are not a thick, dense cover like little stem and switchgrass and stuff like that. A lot of these are in rangeland conditions where it's the ideal sparse grass, which is what everyone wants, right? That's what we've been taught, is that we're supposed to want sparse grass cover. And this is all the science that we're trying to show is this. And now we're saying, but actually, no, when you have grass cover, what happens is that the ground, as you can see in the picture in the foreground, that's what a lot of it looks like. And it's just a sea of caliche in between each of those grasses. And you get so much runoff, you lose the seed diversity, you get erosion. They're finding 20 times more groundwater moving through the limestone underneath the mountain cedars, the nearby grass. So when Wilcox, who's a huge grass person, he started coming up with these numbers because he was trying to prove that the mountain cedars were bad. And his research showed that, oops, wait. So he says it's a game changer. It really kind of changed everything. So I still have, whenever I see him, we have discussions, and because he still doesn't like the cedar trees. He's like, in flash flood regions, interception is good. Dense canopy and dense leaf litter interception help to delay heavy rains. So as it's coming down, the thing is also is that typically rains around here, you know, in a light rain, yeah, the sun comes out quickly, and it all evaporates back into the air. But whenever we have a heavy flash flood, the sun doesn't come out, doesn't evaporate, and all that water continues to drip through slowly. New research has also proven, though, because remember I said before that the earlier science said that they were intercepting 70 to 75. Well, that was shot out of the water by Dr. Keith Owens when he revisited the research and discovered that accidentally included 30% for the soil moisture, which is where you want the water to be. So when you take out that 30%, the interception is about 40%. And guess what? That's about the same as is a nice, dense, thick cover of Indian grass and little blue stem grass. But it's not the same as a sparse cover of grass, less than 20%. It's always important, and I go through this a lot in my book, is going through and actually reading the research and trying to, figure out what were the conditions, where were they? Were the trees? And then I call them, I interrogate them, and ask all kinds of questions. You have to read more than just the abstract. You got to kind of get into a little bit. And if you are reading a research paper, read the abstract and then read the discussion and the conclusion. If you don't understand the science part of it, just read those parts. And those are usually written a little bit more English and are easier to understand. More erosion occurs on because grass alone can't form a continuous cover. That's because on our hills, the soil is sometimes what? 0 to this, to this, to this. No more than that, though. And the grass roots, what happens is that when they limestone bedrock underneath, that their roots start to go lateral. They start to grow laterally. That means that each grass clump on the top, it's like here, next one's over here, next one's over here. That's why you end up with all that caliche around them. But in smaller areas on hillsides, grasses can do a really good job. And that picture on the right, that shows a bunch of mountain cedars on a hillside, and you can see the grass underneath is doing because it's not alone. The grasses just can't do it alone. They have to have that woody vegetation because the woody vegetation has woody roots. And the woody roots are going down there and they're fracturing that limestone. It's dissolving acids from the roots to open up fractures and all that. And that benefits the grass. And the trees are also pulling up water down that the grasses can use. And other areas, Will Cox mentioned before, he said this only applies to karst country. Outside of karst country, like if you're in West Texas, we got deep clays, the woody vegetation don't get more water underneath them because the grasses can grow their roots so deep out. And so therefore the grasses a lot of times will end up winning when it comes to the water use and all that. Now, just because cattle don't eat the leaves doesn't mean that nothing eats or uses them. Wildlife eat the carb-rich berry winter to complement the fats and proteins and fats, acorns and nuts. The juniper hair streak caterpillar and goats also eat the leaves. Have anyone ever seen the juniper hair streak butterfly? They're really small. They're beautiful, but they're really small. And there it is. It's laying an egg on a mountain cedar. And on the bottom left, who here knows seen cedar waxwings? Have y'all ever seen? Do y'all get them down here? Yeah. Okay. Well, they're called cedar waxwings because they eat cedar berries. And they come through and they'll just in swarms. Now they eat other fruits, but they were mainly named because they eat so many of the juniper berries. Before them, now the American robin, tons. Those are the two birds that eat the most juniper berries. Are the cedar waxwings and American robins. Before them, 150 years ago, who knows what was the bird that was eating most of them? Yes, passenger pigeons. So passenger pigeons were the primary ones that were eating it. In fact, I have a quote from around San Saba where someone said that the farmers are all burning their forested cedar to keep the passenger pigeons away from their crop, because they said that the passenger pigeons will come and roost in the cedar forest, and then they go and disseminate their crops. So that they were eating so many berries, so they would just burn off the cedar forest so the pigeons would not show up. They just keep flying over. And in fact, that's a little word right there, is that I was reading, they said roosting, and that was something I remember when I was reading an early report of by Texas Rangers talking about how the wild turkey were roosting in the mountain cedars. I'm like, roosting? And at that time, I just thought of it as a bush. Like, how is a turkey going to roost in something like that? Because they like level horizontal branches to roost in. Because they fly in, they just hang out on the branch. Do that on an angled bush. And that's when I started putting together the story that, these trees were a lot bigger. They were growing as trees. And I put the black bear in there because, for one, the black bears are returning. And a big reason why is that you have a lot of things like junipers and oaks out there that have gotten thick. And so it's giving them a chance to migrate back in because they are forest species. And the hill country used to be called Black Bear Paradise. There were black bears everywhere. And I would love, who here would like to see bears come back? Wouldn't it? I mean, it's like you have to learn how to live with them, but they're not like grizzlies, Yeah, they're livable. I've talked to people in Tennessee, and they're like, yeah, you can live with them. The shredding bark, the trunk fissures, you ever seen like some old ones, how they undulate back and forth? Those, the leaf scales and duff are all used by wildlife of all different sizes. And on the top right there, you got black-capped vireo nest out of the mountain cedar. Who knows what that is on the bottom left? Yeah, she knows. Golden chief warbler, our endangered little bird, and there it is. Well, last little time I gave a talk about 2 weeks ago, it was just a little garden club in a neighborhood, and they thought that was a woodpecker. No, that's not a woodpecker. That's the golden chief warbler. And so it's pulling off a little piece of the bark. And the way that the thing is that when it's really young, and it's like the little bushy kind, they can't pull the bark off because it's so pretty. It produces so much sap because there's no heartwood. But on these trees, at least 40 to 50 years old, that's when the heartwood starts to mature and you don't have as much sapwood. So then the sap starts to disappear. That's when the bark can start to flake off. And that's when animals, like little tiny birds, can get it. And, little other animals like the ring-tailed cat love to nest in junipers.
Who was the slide?
Ring-tailed cat. Yes. So instead of focusing on these problems, we need to start seeing the forest through the trees. So, literally there. Sometimes it switches real fast, other times it's a little slow. Okay. Mountain cedars, and start to see that mountain cedars are a symptom, not the cause of our problems. The real problem is degraded soil. Remember I was talking about how the range scientists were trying, we got to have the sparse grass so that we have more runoff coming off. We want more runoff. All these are leading to, degradation. Our entire region, and I don't know last time any of y'all have driven west on I-10 to Ozona. Have you seen how degraded it is out there? It's I hate to say it, but it's horrendous. It's just they have like no soil. That's where it's taken, is right around Ozona. And but they're being told again and again and again, just keep clearing, just keep clearing, just keep clearing. And that is all that people are being told to do. When the real problem is, it's the soil. And the thing, you can have more springs, you can have more water, you can have good grass and all that. you can have dense vegetation cover, and you can have the spring flows if you improve the soil. But if you don't improve the soil, you can only have a quick fix. The quick fix is just clearing out the cedar, but that doesn't solve the. So what can we do? Well, you move into the ground. So every time it rains, you want to focus on getting how much rain can we get into the ground. And this will help to mitigate floods, wildfire, and drought. When I say mitigate floods, I really mean like flood damage, not that you're going to be able to reduce the volume, just that the damage that it causes. And how do you do it? Well, there's kind of 4 basic steps, and this is part of that Project Bedrock I was mentioning at the beginning, this online land management tool that we're developing, and these is part of the outline of this. You roughen the ground. I don't know how many of y'all have been going around, I see on Facebook all the time, we see all these contractors saying, oh, we'll come out, find all those rocks down, we'll make everything smooth and clean and neat, or we'll come and park it up and clean it up. And I'm like, no, you need rough. Again, flash flood alley. We don't want smooth. We need rough. You got to smooth around the house, but you know. You want to densify the cover. You don't want sparse grass. Dense cover. Now, whether it's grass or, you know, mountains, it doesn't matter. The point is it's got to be dense. It's got to be able to cover that soil. And then you regenerate the soil and you diversify the habitat. So you kind of go in that order. You start at the top. If you're really degraded, you can start at the bottom if you have healthier soil. And here's about roughening. Okay, so you roughen the ground to slow. You make it less clean, more messy. You create surface obstacles that slow runoff velocity. And this is a great picture. I saw this when I was on doing an assessment for a landowner. His side of the creek on the left, his neighbor, I just found out something about the neighbor. He mows the entire thing. The entire 3 days I was out there, I never heard the sprinklers stop. Guess where he's from? Corpus Christi. The city that is running out of water, and we wonder why. That was illuminating. Okay. So I'm going to give you some examples how to rough using mountain cedars. For one, you want to retain most of the hillside woody cover. Remember I said that's where your most shallow soil is. You need more woody cover on the hillsides. Where you have the deeper, more level areas, you can have it be more open. But on the hillsides with these shallow soils, they are more wooded. And like I read earlier, that's how it existed 150 years ago. 250 years ago, the hills were covered with trees. And here's some examples, like the picture on the right there, top, that's kind of like chop and drop, where you don't haul it off, you know, that you just drop it in place. Where you cut it, you just drop it. And it acts as a cage to allow other stuff to come up. So you're keeping the ground covered. The picture on the bottom left was done on City of Austin parkland, where you use the cut slash to form windrows on contour. So you want to always try to follow the contour, vertical to the direction that the rain is coming down. And so it ends up when the rain hits it, it'll spread it out to create kind of like a linear retention pond of sorts, but it just slows down the rain. The one on the right there is a really thing called slash matting, where you just drop pieces of slash down. You'll find that after even just a year, you go behind each little piece and there's a bunch of silt starting to build up. You know, it's just these simple little things, but it's all about roughening the ground. Then you want to densify to cover. As I said, we have really shallow soils, and this is why. It's because our soils take 40 times longer to rebuild than other soils. And they're so shallow, but the thing is, we don't have a lot of subsoil. Most soils, you know, you got the different horizons and all that. We really don't have that. We just kind of have top and bottom, and that's it. And the subsoil is where, as the bedrock underneath kind of like breaks down, holds on, catches onto those minerals, and they can feed the soil. But with us, it just washes down into the caves and gets stalagmites, which are cool, but it also means that you have to really be on top of protecting that soil so you don't give it the chance to wash away. And one thing is like if you have and you want to do a fire resistant plan is you add shade breaks. Well, shaded fuel breaks means that you keep it shaded. So you're keeping a break underneath, and that's preventing the ground fires from coming through. So it gives like a little break to that, but you keep it shaded. And it's more important to keep our shaded to keep a cooler microclimate. That is what's going to actually keep it more fire resistant around. It's because our trees are so short. You know, like the redwoods where they do have more fires, their canopies start up there, and ours start about here. So if you have too much grass growing underneath, they're going to torch out the trees. Densify the cover of the soil. And to do it with mountain cedars, again, you retain a lot of the thicker. You sheet mulch, which is the right-hand picture. You protect new growth from deer. You'd be amazed at how much stuff is already in the ground. Like my son's father, he put a wire cage in a big juniper. And within 5 years, I mean, there was rusty blackhaw, Lindheimer daisy. I mean, there was so much diversity in that one little area, and we didn't seed anything. It just came up by itself. It's amazing how much is in the soil just waiting. On severely degraded slopes, a lot of the seed bank will be gone. So you're going to have to get up there and reseed that because a lot of the seed has been washed away with the soil. Densify the cover. The easiest way to protect new plant growth is to use the mountain cedars as a nurse tree. Stop parking it up. And y'all are in the city. I don't know who here has land in the hill country. Okay. It has become such a trend. Everywhere I go, they limit, and a lot of people, even just on like the Western San Antonio, they do this. They limit up, and then they say nothing grows under the cedars. I'm like, we just opened up 24-hour buffet for the deer by doing that. So you got to keep it down. So what I like to teach people is you go through, you look at that cedar bush, see if there's anything coming up. If there is, then you leave that alone. And lots of things grow underneath mountain cedars. No, it's not toxic. It's just we have a lot of deer. You want to regenerate the soil to sink the rain. The most fascinating thing that I found out, now the picture on the upper right, that's under a microscope looking at, who here knows about the mycorrhizal fungi? More and more people are learning about this. That is, if you like digging in the soil, you see the white threads in the soil. That means you got good stuff. That is the mycorrhizal fungi. And then they'll, excuse me, under trees and stuff, they come together and whoop, they form a mushroom. So that's what the mushrooms come from. And you have like two basic types of this fungi. You have the arbuscular mycorrhizal fungus and the ectomycorrhizal fungus. Well, the arbuscular is kind of more primitive. And so that's the one that's going to be first. And then the soil gets more healthy, then you get the second one. When a lot of times when the juniper is into degraded areas, you either have very limited amount of arbuscular mycorrhizal fungus that's active, or it might be totally dormant. The junipers actually have the potential to start growing without any fungus active. And as they start, they're able to basically kind of like jumpstart or reactivate that fungus. That is why when they're growing like that, they're a pioneer species. They can also grow in the forest, but when they're acting like that, that is acting as a pioneer. Once they get that fungus going, that's when the oaks and cedar elms and other things can start coming in. Also, underneath the mountain cedars, if you see this, it's like, the first pictures I showed where it was really degraded and eroded. Well, the thing is as they start to close the canopy, they start dropping more and more and more leaf debris And because it's tiny and scaly and interlocking, it starts to form these little berms. And after a big rain, they'll wash out, and then they'll start backing up again and backing up. And slowly over time, 10 years, might take 5 years, might take longer, depending upon how degraded it is. It'll eventually form a solid cover. Now, at that point, though, it has one goal, and that is to help regenerate that soil. It's not to grow vegetation. So you won't see a whole lot of understory at that point because it's so matted. And I discovered that if you just prune up some of the branches, open up the way for armadillos and deer, that once the wildlife start coming in there, they break it up and growing. So it's just part of ecological succession. And we want to diversify the habitat to sustain the soil. The more diverse, the more species that you have, the more diverse that soil is going to be. And the diverse the soil is, the more it's going to be able to sustain the health of the plants. So you don't want to go in, you see like parking lots or things like that, except for out here. This parking lot is amazing. This is diverse. This parking lot is diverse, but I'm talking like grocery store parking lots. But a lot of times in parking lots, they just do one plant, a lawn. Someone's like St. Augustine lawn. That's a monoculture, and there's not much diversity under there. So you want to have more and more. The more plant diversity you get, the more microbes you get in the soil. Okay, and here's one of the things. Now, this is for people who own land, is that on rolling to level uplands where you want to reduce the amount of mountain cedar, don't ever, and this is too common, people go out there and they clear everything all at once. That is what we need to stop doing. We need to do it in phases, and that's called patch reduce. So you're patch reducing, you're reducing in patches and segments. And here, who's ever been to Bamberger's ranch? This is aerial photo as part of the ranch. You could see they've done this, but they follow the contours. So you're not just, it's like thinking different benefits instead of just trying to benefit one thing. So diversifying the habitat, but at the same time, they're doing it on contour to help slow the runoff. You see, so you want to layer in different things that you're doing to achieve several objectives at the same time. And okay, here's a good one. On hills and in bottomlands, work to guide mountain cedar regrowth into new forests. That picture there on the left-hand side, that's your typical like little young regrowth cedar stuff. And on the right, that is an old growth cedar brake forest. And again, that's what we're going to be doing as part of our online tool, is setting the steps of what can be done to guide how to identify, okay, that's where it should be forest. This is, how to tell the difference between, oh, that's just acting as a pioneer species in a rangeland versus regrowth that can become a forest. And then how to go from there. Signs you're doing it right. You have beautiful wildflowers. This right here is amazing. So this was an old, decrepit hayfield. And they went in using one of the techniques that we're going to be promoting. It's called contour ripping. And you get yeoman's plow, which is 2 blades, and they're drug through the soil to rip the subsoil. Obviously, you don't do this on the hillsides. It's not deep enough. You do this in the areas with the deeper soil, like closer to the dam, and you drag it through on contour, and it rips the subsoil without turning the topsoil. All the topsoil intact, and the next time it rains, it drops into all these little crevices. They did that, and then they spread seed. This picture was taken 3 years later, and it was just Absolutely amazing. When you can tell when you're walking through the other old hayfield that they did not do anything to. The ground is hard. There's no low diversity. You walk through here, it's spongy. And that's what you want. That's when you know the soil is good. Spongy. No. Oh, no. I got the best pictures.
Can you repeat what that was called for those?
Yeah, it's called contour ripping. Another, that contour ripping just goes on the contours. Keyline plowing uses the same machine, but it creates kind of these different little divots. It's a lot more complex. Contour ripping is a lot easier. But it's is a method that was developed in the 1940s by someone who just used the two blades because he saw that turning the soil was drying it out. When it dries out, the soil biology dies. So he said, but so it's a great way to just break it up. I mean, you see old like clay, kind of hard clay fields and stuff like that where they get cracks in them. You can put your fist in. It's kind of like the same thing. It's like nature's kind of doing that. So a lot of times what we're trying to do is mimic what nature's already doing, but in a little more organized way.
Was that field you shown visible from one of the roads in Blanco County? Because I've seen something like that. I driven to Blanco County. There's a couple of roads through there.
No, it's on one of the it's on one of the back roads, but then it's down one of their street roads, kind of.
That's not actually out more of the main road.
No, yeah, but it might be what you might be seeing is the same work that they did there.
Well, right. It's
probably the same person who did that.
Like that worked there.
Yeah, because I know that Pete Van Dyke, who did that, that was at his place. I know he's done that to other people in the area.
There's some prairie that looks like that.
Yeah.
Coming off the creek, runs back up. I forget the names of the roads up there.
Yeah.
But there's a field up there that's kind of like that.
Beautifying the hill country one at a time.
That's right.
Okay, there we go. Is it on Zoom?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we're almost at the end here. Signs that you're doing it right. I could go on and on and on here, but this is a short presentation. One of the great things, picture on the left, that is what range scientists want, and it's exposed soil. But the signs that you're making things better is when it starts to become more covered. So the picture on the right is what you want. This is kind of interesting. Nathan, you're probably right. This is from Fletcher's property. Is that if you're walking across a lot of loose rock, or some of the rock is sticking out and all that, that means that you're having a lot of soil erosion. It doesn't mean you can't have surface rock. We're in Karst country. We should have surface rock, but it should be embedded. Okay, so when you're walking, you're not tripping on it. So you see how do you see how it is different on the right? That it's embedded, that it doesn't move when you walk across, and that is what you want. The mountain cedar bark. Remember, I was talking about how it starts to shred at 40 to 50 years. Until then, the picture on the left is one that's going to be less than 40 years old because its trunk has this white bark lichen. Robergia was albicedra, and it only grows on, and it seems to be the theory, but no, the proof is that it's actually feeding on that excess sticky sap. So that as the heartwood matures and it stops being sticky, that's when it goes on the branches and the twigs, although by the time it's 200, 300 years old, it's all gone. But you always know when you see it, okay, it's less than 40 years old. So the more trees that you see, more mountain cedars with shaggy bark, that means you're doing things right. Because you want to have more of the older, because we've cut down and annihilated so many. Signs you're doing it right is that if you have a spring, a hillside spring, I'm not talking like an artesian spring, but a hillside spring that flows all summer long. That means the land is good, the land is healthy, and things are going good. This picture on the upper right, anyone know what that is? I got two different things there.
There's a moss there for sure. Maybe there's slime mold problem.
No, that's not slime mold. That's gold dust lichen.
Okay.
So that is a lichen, and that only grows where you have old growth forest, old growth juniper oak forest specifically. So if you have gold dust lichen growing on there, and it means not just one that's growing, but like an undisturbed, healthy old growth forest. So if you start seeing lots of gold dust lichen, that's a good thing. You see little mushrooms coming up. That means that you have good soil biology underneath. And this picture on the right, who knows what this is? Big tooth maples. This was remarkable. I found this at a landowner's property near Lakey. He backs up to, his property is adjacent to Big Tooth Maple, Lost Maples Park. And I was walking through, and they were all just marveling at the big trees, the maples. I was looking down like, holy smokes, I have never seen so much natural regeneration. And it's like you could see where the deer are walking, but they weren't eating them because there was so much diversity, and the deer were so well fed, they didn't have to eat everything. And I said, do you not have any deer? He says, no, we have a lot of deer. Okay, if you got painted buntings, you're doing something right. Painted buntings are a really excellent indicator of healthy, diverse, more like your low scrub type of stuff, but really, really good, healthy stuff. Got wild turkeys, that's good. If you have this picture on the bottom left, it's a little hard to see. That is the orb weaver. If you see orb weavers in your grasses and your yuccas, down low, that's healthy. And best of all, if you got dung beetles, you're doing something right. And the reason for that is because when it comes to ranching, a lot of ranchers, they treat their cattle for parasites using ivermectin. And ivermectin is a death sentence for poor little dung beetles because it comes out in the poop, and then the little parents come along into the holes for their babies, not realizing they're feeding them chemicals, and the babies all die. If you see dung beetles everywhere, that means if you're having cow chip tossing parties, that's bad. Okay, any questions? Now, what I've done here is the QR code is the link to our website, the Project Bedrock. Also listed the website name. In the back, I have some books for sale and some little cards and stuff like that if you want to learn more about Project Bedrock and what we're doing. Anyone have any questions? Yes.
Before the questions begin, excuse me, I think just in the interest of everyone's safety, the storms are kind of coming in through from the west, heading this. We'll just try to keep it to maybe 7 minutes, somewhere around there, for the length of question.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So you mentioned earlier that growth juniper forests, or the ones from centuries ago, were more single trunk.
Yes.
Versus the ones now are more multi-trunk.
Yes.
Why is that? Is it just because of an age thing? Or?
No, it seemed okay. It's.
Can you repeat his question?
Oh yeah, for the Zoom people. Yeah, you're right. So, gentleman in the orange shirt just asked, how is it that the big ones are single trunk and all the new ones are bushes? There's lots of still no real hard science. The prevailing thought is that the bushes are typically coming up in degraded soil, so they're really tall, but also they're coming up in full sun. Like if you see a mountain laurel coming up in full sun, it's going to grow as a bush, not a tree. Same thing with the live oak, so we have a lot of things like that. The Texas persimmon, that they'll be more bushy. There's also some other theories that, remember I said in the beginning how you had the hybrids going on, is that the thing is that the junipers, Avada always grows as a single trunk tree. That might be that genetics are affecting it somehow. because whenever I'm doing samples, I only find the single trunk ones that are adjacent and part of growing out in the open rangeland. It seems that the bushes initially might have occurred more on tops of high hills where it was very dry and where that kind of form would have excelled. So no one knows for sure. It's quite the question, because when you're looking at all the and if you look at my book, I go through a whole chapter and I talk about all the different forms that the tree can take, and it's just astounding. So it can't just be the growth habit, the growth conditions. There got to be something with genetics in there too, I think.
Yeah, I have noticed when trees are growing closer together, they tend to have a more tall, thin.
But that only happens near forest and stuff. So, but see, I call that dog hair regrowth, which is like, aspen trees do the same thing. Other plants will come in real tight like that and just squish it together like that. So I think it might be just a combination of things, really.
Okay.
Oh, you
used the phrase branch up. Did you mean that people are pruning their trees when you said branch up?
did I say branch up? Park up. No. Yeah, parking it up means removing all the branches, everything, and just turning it and making it look like a city tree.
Oh, okay. And is it bad to the cedar trees? Does that hurt them? I know
It's not that it hurts them. My point is that you could do it to some of them and stuff like that. My point is that make sure that there's no new emerging plants coming up, because we've lost so much biodiversity and stuff like that. And y'all know what native plants look like, is that y'all can identify, and then don't prune those up just to save money. So you have to go buy a cage for them. That's what I'm saying there. It's that it's about trying to retain that biodiversity.
some of those cedar trees take up so much room in your yard, though. The old ones, they're run out so far. You know what I mean? With their branches, they just take up a whole lot of room.
Oh, are you talking about the kind, the bushy kind?
No, the kind that they're older and they just spread.
Oh, I love those. I'm not going to touch those. Those are glorious. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I thought you meant the little bushy ones. I'm like always with the bush is like, please don't try pruning those up. They noodle tail and line tail. I'm like, either just cut the whole thing out or leave it alone. But no, what you have is glorious. Love it. Embrace it.
Why the 30-year
Okay, so she just asked, why is it that so many people thought that they were short-lived trees? I think it's because the only thing I can assume is that people keep cutting them down. We cut them down every 30 years. Sorry. And so therefore we only see a 30-year-old tree. I mean, people are shocked when I tell them, no, they can live for hundreds of years, I mean, I've had a lot of people who'll say, yeah, I'll cut down the cedar even if it has a 4-foot wide trunk because it's, it's not very old. and oh, I'm sorry, wait, you back there.
Yeah, no worries. So cedar, ash juniper is keystone species, I would imagine. Would you describe it as that? And a keystone species. You called it a pioneer species in certain situations, but is it a keystone in your opinion? And also, can you talk a little bit more about its relationship with other trees? Our natural area that's growing alongside, the cedar elms and the oaks, and they seem to all be part of, landscape.
Yeah. I mean, for instance, like she was asking if mountain cedars are species, and to me, as an ecologist, I kind of think more as wildlife as keystone species. I never really have applied the word keystone to plants, but it's a very integral, important part of our, and there's so many things that are dependent on them. I mean, they could be to a degree, depends upon the condition, the health, the location. I wouldn't just say a blanket that, because the pioneer ones are not keystones. Those are pioneers. And that's a totally different thing. And you're talking about relationships with other trees. Just in terms of water use, a lot of people will think that they're, choking the oaks, so they want to cut them all from around the oaks. And for one, the two have been growing side by side for thousands of years, that they're okay with each other. I have this one picture of a shin oak that is like this with a juniper, and they're both thriving. They're literally embraced. The live oak, its roots, an older oak, its roots will go 50 to 60 feet deep, and old mountain cedar roots only go 25 to 30 feet. So they're using water from different levels and at different times of the day. It's like they have literally, and I'm using the live oak because the live oak and mountain cedar are companion plants. They are growing constantly with each other. It's like I said, the live oak will until the mountain cedar reactivates that arbuscular mycorrhizal fungus, and then it immediately starts growing in. So those two are definitely, they're kind of co-partners. But just as for like interactions and stuff like that with other trees, it's I'm not exactly sure how to do that in terms of what you're looking for in your question.
That was actually, I was interested in the companion trees.
Yeah.
What would you want to see naturally for all these species?
Yeah, in terms of true companion stuff, like there's some orchids that do grow, the crested root orchid that grows only underneath established mountain cedars, madrone trees that they can only get started under the juniper, and there's different things. In fact, some people are right now studying the fungus under them to see what's happening, but he thought it was because it's very likely, again, a combination of things, that it's making it more skinny. And the madrones kind of need that. They don't have a lot of root hairs, so they kind of need some extra help, and having the fungus there the way that they want it. And also it gives them protection from the deer. The biggest kind of interaction with these trees is the way that the mountain cedar, how they interact with each other, but rather is how the mountain cedar makes it possible for them to, because if we didn't have the mountain cedar, if a lot of the things here would just die, they would perish. Because throughout the whole 1800s, everyone keeps talking about the overgrazing that happened, but hardly anyone ever mentions the clear cutting. It was just as rampant and nonstop. Hills were cut 3, 4, and 5 times over the 1900s, and we lost a lot of the seed and all that. So right now, it's trying to get that back and preserving every bit of old growth that we can find, because those are little islands, diversity islands, and we need to be protecting those. And anywhere, not just with trees, but with grasses. Anytime you have grasses growing tight, when you're walking grasses, your foot nut should never touch the ground, unless it's just been recently grazed or burned. But I'm just talking about, when it's just regular growing, you want it to be so dense there that it creates a cushion. Like that hayfield I said, it was, squishy, spongy. We want spongy. So, I mean, I have heard some people calling the ash juniper a keystone species, and because, like I said, it's like, to me, it's more as a pioneer, and so you can't just say it is a keystone species. It kind of depends on the situation. Okay, are we done? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was amazing. That's great stuff. And she will be here to answer questions as soon as we're done wrapping up. And I think we're going to wrap up. I don't think we're going to try and chance going back to the original screen, but I'll share the answers somehow, some way, maybe through email of what those plants were in case anyone was finding out if you had the right answers. There were a couple of announcements in there concerning a plant walk happening on, I think it was June, the plant tour. There'll be an email coming out about featuring some members' yards, landscape yards, native landscape yards, and then also the NLCP class. I think there's a waiting list, which is really wonderful. It's happening this Saturday. If any openings should, I guess, then if you're interested, you can contact Joe Miller. And I think that might be all the major announcements, but we'll sum it all up in an email and send it out, okay? Thank you very, very much for putting up with our technological problems, and we'll see you next month. Be safe on the way home.
Didn't even get to.
I don't know for things. I mean, how can the things be good one month and not good the next?
I don't know.
Are we done?
I think
Recording?